Hi, my name's Rich Harrington, and welcome to this edition of the Photoshop CS4 Sneak Peek. Now, there's a lot of great things you could do in Photoshop Extended, including work with video files. Now, we're going to both use some video files that are actual movies, as well as talk about sizing some graphics for video. Let's start with that second one there, making a video graphic that's ready from a photo. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and open up an image here by double-clicking, and it's going to open it into Photoshop. Now, what we're going to do is take this image and drop it into a video-sized document. Easiest way to do that is to choose File, New, and from the preset list, specify Film and Video category. Once we've done that, we could choose a size that we need, including digital video sizes, standard definition sizes, PAL, high def, or even film. Let's go ahead with an HD size using the DVZ Pro HD for 720p from Panasonic. We'll click OK, and you'll notice that the pixel aspect ratio is down below here. Photoshop is going to take care of the correct pixel aspect ratio for you, and this is great. If you've been using this feature in older versions of Photoshop, you may notice when you open up some of your graphics that you get an error message. We're going to see that in just 1 second. We're going to go ahead and click OK here. It warns us that this is for preview purposes only. Don't worry about that. Click OK, and we can now simply copy and paste. Select all, copy, switch over, paste. Now the great news is that all of the non-square pixels have been taken advantage of on its own. Photoshop transforms the image for you and converts to the right non-square pixels. We can go ahead and scale this as needed. I'm going to go up just a little bit. I can get away with a slight enlargement, and we'll drop that as put. Now, one of the things I want to call to your attention is that if you go over here to the image menu, you won't see anything about pixel aspect ratio. That's because Adobe correctly moved it to the View menu, and this is something I've been lobbying for a while. When you're using the pixel aspect ratio commands inside of Photoshop, you're not actually converting the image. Rather, you are interpreting the image. So that's where the View menu comes into play. You can go over to View here, and you'll see that it has a pixel aspect ratio assigned. And normally, these are assigned when you create the document. If you open up a frame grab that you've exported from a video program and it looks distorted, then you're going to go over here to View and pick the correct aspect ratio for the particular videotape format that that image came from. You also can toggle off pixel aspect ratio correction. When you do that, the image will look a bit distorted, but you get a higher quality image. So that pixel aspect ratio preview is just that, it's a preview. You'll get a little bit of softening with the image, particularly with text, but the good news is that Adobe made these preview quality much higher in CS4. So in earlier versions of Photoshop, if you saw a little bit of softening and it bothered you, you'll get less of that with Photoshop CS4 because they improved it. Also be sure if you've got a video system hooked up to your computer using FireWire that you take advantage of the ability to do a video preview. And this will allow you to send out the image over FireWire and look at it on a 16:9 or a 4:3 monitor. And it'll actually do the pixel aspect ratio preview there and correct the image to the monitor for you. Go ahead and close that right now. If you get an error message when you go to open up an image, that's because Photoshop made some subtle changes. And actually, it wasn't just Photoshop, it was the entire Adobe Creative line. You used to use a number like 0.9 when working with digital video to indicate the pixel aspect ratio. Well, the engineers at Adobe refined that just a little bit. Let's go to Photoshop here and choose a new document. And you'll notice, for example, with NTSC DV, it's still 720 by 480, but the pixel aspect ratio is 0.91. Same thing down here. Instead of 1.2 for widescreen, it's 1.21. Now, that's 1/100th of a decimal, and you're not going to really see that. If you do, call me because I'd like to hire you for a job because you see things that I can't. But what's going on here is a subtle change to how the pixels are interpreted. So if you open up an older Photoshop project that used non-square pixels, it's going to update the graphic when you open it up. The change should be imperceptible, but it's a slight change that makes for just a little bit of better scaling and output when using those non-square pixels with video. Now, speaking of video, what about using a video file inside of Photoshop? So let's go ahead and choose File, Open, and we're going to grab ourselves a video file. Actually, I'll open 2 of them here. There we go. Actually, I'll open all 3 here, to 3 separate documents. Now, it's giving us a warning about the pixel aspect ratio. That's that whole thing there where they made that subtle change at the 100th of a percentage point there. Don't worry about that. Just click OK. You won't notice a difference, but it fixes it. And let's start with this first layer here. We're going to call up the animation timeline so we can see that, and this will give us our controls. Now, when working here, you want to make sure that you actually have the sound turned on for the layer and globally here for the timeline. What's cool now is when you press play, it'll actually start to cache the frames and you can hear the audio. Now, this may not matter for some clips. If you're working with a clip where the audio doesn't matter, just turn that off and it'll start to cache the frames. But sometimes the audio does matter, especially if you're doing a motion graphics project and you're using Photoshop Extended's animation capabilities where you want to synchronize things up to the sound. Or maybe you're trying to find an exact part within a soundbite where you have to do a fix. Still, regardless of what you need it for, it's great to have audio support built right in here. So if you've got a clip with audio, when you go to export, it's going to be there, it's going to come in, you can hear it, and when you export it, it goes right back out. So no having to sync things up later. So there we see it there. It's gone ahead and cached. Let's go ahead and turn the speaker icon back on. And you'll see here it plays smoothly. If you want to, you could actually deinterlace the clip as well. So if we go to Layer, Video Layers, Interpret Footage, you can actually go ahead and deinterlace it. In this case, I'll say use the lower field and duplicate. And when I click OK there, you'll see we get a little clearer of an image. So, great flexibility as a design option when working with it. Let's go ahead and switch to a new video layer here, and I want to take advantage of some filters. Now this image looks pretty good, but what I'd like to do is actually stylize it a bit. Normally when you run a filter on a video frame, it's going to go just to that individual frame. But if you convert the video layer to a smart object, then you get smarter filters. Let's go ahead and right click and say make this a smart object, which it does, still preserves all the video aspects of that layer. And then we could say filter, stylize, glowing edges. Now this filter by default gives you sort of a Velvet Elvis look. We'll make those edges a little bit wider and click OK. But remember, we can go ahead and double click here on the blending options and play with those. For example, screen is going to knock that down, and we can tweak the opacity here and get a nice edge effect, sort of like a cartoon type filter. Let's combine that here with another filter. Filter, sketch, notepaper. Play with the image balance here till we get a nice mix. Take the graininess down and the relief up, and then double click to blend that. Let's turn the glowing edges off for a second. Just do the notepaper. We'll set that to overlay. Click OK. Turn glowing edges back on. And we'll just reverse the stacking order there to get greater flexibility. That looks pretty cool. If we need to tone those down, just tweak the opacity and you could drop those a bit. But you get full flexibility as you're working here with filters on your video layer. There we go. And so here's the original, here's the after, and I got a nice cartooning type effect. And if we press play, you see it plays. We want to mute the audio, just click the speaker icon there, and let's kick that back to the beginning for a second and let it go. Now, these type of smart filters can get relatively processor intensive. You got to remember you're running an image filter on anywhere between 24 and 30 frames of video per second. So just how it takes time to process a still photo, it's going to take time to process that video. But this opens up all sorts of options when you're working with video files. And when you're happy with it, all you're going to do is choose File, Export, Render Video. This will call up a new dialog box that's very intuitive. You can go ahead and select a target folder, specify that you want to write a QuickTime movie or an AVI file, whatever you need. Click Settings, and you can actually change the codec to anything you have on your system. So if you need to go to DVC Pro or DV, you can do that. Set a quality setting as you need to. Specify interlace or progressive, the aspect ratio of the clip. In this case, it's 16:9. What you want to do with audio, and set it all up to go, and then click Render, and it'll go and write out the video file. Remember, if you have audio, make sure that you actually turn that audio icon on at the bottom of the timeline here. When it's all set, just click Render, and it's going to write the video file to wherever you told it to. That's it for this episode of Photoshop CS4 Sneak Peek. I'm your host, Rich Harrington. We've got a lot of cool things that you can check out over at our website at cs4.com. That's CSFOUR.com. We've got a great contest going with prizes that you can win, as well as all of the other episodes in the training series. So be sure to check that out. If you'd like to learn more about Photoshop on a regular basis, we have some ongoing podcast series you might be interested in. The first is called Understanding Adobe Photoshop. You can find out about it at rastervector.com. It's for general interest Photoshop enthusiasts, digital photographers, graphic designers, web folks. As far as those of you working in video and motion graphics, you're going to want to check out our other series, Photoshop for Video, and its blog at photoshopforvideo.com. So, I hope you enjoyed it. This is Rich Harrington, and tune into our other episodes. Thanks.